Koundouri is the director of the Research Laboratory on Socioeconomic and Environmental Sustainability at Athens University of Economics and Business. She is widely recognized as a pioneer of innovative, human-centric, interdisciplinary systems of the sustainable interaction between nature, society, and the economy. She's a very impressive academic. She is listed in the 1% of most cited women economists in the world. And she's included within the official Stanford University list of top 2% of world scientists. Among her accomplishments are 15 published books and more than 500 published peer-reviewed scientific articles, book chapters, research, and policy reports.
Good morning to your audiences. I'm very happy to be here.
We're very pleased to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Do you want me to share some slides, or you would prefer to avoid this?
No, if you have a slide presentation, that would work out fine. We'd like for you to speak for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll go into a question and answer portion of the session.
Lovely. Okay, I'm sharing my presentation. So my presentation is about the implementation of the SDGs as a whole, as a framework. And the big question is, why do we want to address this very difficult, holistic, science-driven framework, and what are the challenges, but also what is the wealth of opportunities that allows us to be motivated enough to have this endeavor. Just give me a minute because my presentation is too big for you, so I will open something else. So the SDGs have been launched in 2015, and a few months later, the European Green Deal was launched as well. So we have the SDGs, we have the European Green Deal, we have the drafting of all the policies within the European Green Deal. I don't know if you can see my slides now.
Yes,
so the main premise in our hands is that at the moment we are in an era of multi-crisis. The pandemic has been over, but we know that the more regular and frequent pandemics will be arising because of the collapse of the ecosystem, which is the other big crisis that we are facing, and also the climate crisis, the destabilization of climate, the inflationary pressures and recession that came in from the destruction of value chain of COVID, and then of course the geopolitical crisis that brings wars and aggravates the energy and food crisis, which are difficult to solve in an era of population increasing across the globe and increasing income inequality. And we all agree that the SDGs are our manual away from all these crises. It's our way to pave pathways that will simultaneously face all these crises. 2015, 193 countries have signed the goals, and a few months later, the Paris Agreement detailing SDG 13, climate action. And in Europe, we have the leadership transposition of the SDG framework into a policy, regulatory, legal framework, the European Green Deal, signed in 2019, and having 4 axes: climate neutrality by 2050, clean tech leadership by European companies, reduction of pollution for the health of people and ecosystem, and leave no one behind. And as an example, I present the European Green Deal because even after COVID, the major non-linearity of COVID, the European growth strategy remained to be the European Green Deal, and the recovery and resilience facility that gather additional 750 billion in addition to the 1 trillion that is supporting the European Green Deal. And this recovery and resilience facility of the 750 billion focus on the green and digital recovery from COVID. And green and digital basically means renewables, circular economy, nature-based solutions, e-mobility. Digital means deploying cutting-edge technologies, upskilling and reskilling with regards to digital skills, cyber connectivity, increased connectivity, and increased cyber security. So we know now where our future lies. We know the skills that we need to develop. We know the sectors with the new jobs. And we also have the EU taxonomy that regulates the financial institutions, the banks, but also the businesses towards implementing the environmental, social governance criteria, and at the same time making explicit that sustainable investments are investments that focus on climate adaptation, mitigation, clean technology, circular economy, sustainable use of water and oceans, and conserving biodiversity. And then we have the Fit for 55 in 2021 announced, basically refining all regulations that have to do with our two basic systems that we have to regulate in order to drive our way towards climate neutrality: the energy system and the transport system, and the land use system and ocean systems. And basically what we need to do is to decarbonize the energy and transport system and recarbonize the ecosystems. Recarbonize means increasing the regenerative capacity of Earth in order to be able to function as sinks of CO2 emission and support with the decarbonization of the energy system the pathways towards climate neutrality. And most of the suggested legislation in Fit for 55 have been voted by the European Parliament this year, a few weeks before. And in 2022, we of course have Repower EU, which basically means focusing on renewables, reducing fossil fuels, especially from Russia, and including recovery, interconnectivity of value chain. So the SDGs, it's a framework that is holistic. You can see by the transposition of this framework that is very detailed transposition in the European Green Deal. There are hundreds of thousands of pages in the regulatory framework that supports the European Green Deal. And not only the SDGs are science hectic and policy hectic and data hectic, they also need to find the way to attract financing towards their implementation. At the moment, the SDGs funding gap is 11 to 14 trillion US dollars across the globe. One important thing with regards to the SDGs, at least for me and my work, is to be able to measure performance against the SDGs. So every year since 2015, we publish the Sustainable Development Report as United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, a global network of more than 1,800 institutional members. It's led by Professor Jeff Sachs. I lead the European quarters with more than 500 researchers, and our aim is to provide a consistent framework with KPIs to measure the performance of each and every nation against the 17 SDGs, 169 goals, and we measure all this with about 250 KPIs. And we do a report not just for the world as a whole, but a more detailed one for Europe. And you can see this is the ranking for Europe, but also the colors that you see here showcase where the holistic SDG framework has better implementation. Anything close to green means better implementation of the SDGs. To the 78 and above percentage, whereas red means lower performance rates, and vivid red means stagnation towards the achievement of the SDGs. And this is a holistic framework for the European Union as a whole. You can see that no SDG has been achieved in the Union, so we have lots of way ahead. And you can see with the arrows, not just the level of implementation of the SDGs, but also the projection towards 2030. What is the trend towards achieving this SDG by 2030? And we do this kind of SDG measurements, not just against nations, not just against local authorities, cities, but we can also do the measurement for companies and financial institutions and asset portfolios, which is crucial because it allows a very explicit and commonly agreed framework for assessing and monitoring where we are going and understanding where more budget should be allocated and more interventions should be allocated. So the SDGs measurement index and dashboard is not just to know the ranking, but it is a tool that can help countries and cities and local authorities and companies allocate investments, allocate budgets, and identify the specific transformations that they need to make in order to make progress against the SDGs. And let me remind you again that progress against the SDGs is progress with regards to the financial impact, the socioeconomic impact, the governance impact, and of course, the impact on natural resources. So the SDGs is not an environmental framework. The SDGs is a socioeconomic framework that interacts with the natural capital and allows explicit integration of natural capital, human capital, and financial capital into the investment decisions. Now, as the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA, we are 5 institutions, 5 accelerations, and a number of academies and networks. I lead or co-lead each and every one of these parties with 200 researchers and more than 100 projects that have attracted a lot of competitive funding, working on climate change mitigation adaptation, sustainable seas and oceans, sustainable land use, water, food and energy, biodiversity nexus, innovation acceleration, upskilling and reskilling, and of course, ESG, SDG measurement, and sustainable finance. I will very quickly showcase one of the landmark projects that we have, which is the Global Climate Hub of the UN Sustainable Development Network, which basically designs and supports the design of net zero pathways at country level in collaboration with national governments and respective SDGs national hubs. We co-design national and sub-national pathways for the transition to a climate neutral and climate resilient world. And we all basically develop detailed optimal dynamic mixture of technological pathways, financial pathways, and policy pathways to be implemented in each country so that the transition to neutrality can actually happen, because we've been traveling across the world. As I told you, we have a hub in each and every country of the world almost, and if there is no hub in one country, then the country belongs to a regional hub. And there, when we talk with governments, when we talk with other stakeholders, policy makers, businesses, financial institutions, scientists, the civil society, nobody will tell you that we don't care about the climate crisis or we don't think it's a significant problem. They will tell you we care, but how are we going to make the transition to net zero? What are the technologies? Who is going to finance the transition? What are the policies that are really going to incentivize the transition? And that's why we created this hub. And this hub has 9 different units. One is about climate data platforms and digital applications, the science of atmospheric physics that support the pathways, climate and energy modeling, climate and land use modeling, climate and health, innovation acceleration, the socioeconomic narrative, just transition policies, finance, and the labor market, transformative participatory approaches, national living labs and systems innovation, and education, training, upskilling, and reskilling. And let me quickly go through each one of these hubs and I finish. So there is a lot of data that is needed in order to really fit into the models that are going to sketch the pathways. And we have a partnership with the Earth Observation Office, which basically collects geospatial data, and together with socioeconomic data that we gather on a big platform, SDG space platform that collects millions of information, raw data, modeling outcome, policy outcome papers, and so on. We create an AI-driven data infrastructure that allows mining and automatic updating of the data in order to feed into the models that we have. The next unit is on atmospheric physics, and for this we work with IPC relevant players so that we have the projections of the temperature across different scenarios. Then we have the climate and energy system modeling, and here we use the integrated energy systems across sections and consumption, which is called Palmora. This is a partial equilibrium system that allows you to identify the least cost pathways, the optimal mixture of technologies that allow the production of energy that will satisfy future demand. It's technology rich and allows high spatial temporal optimization. Then the climate and land and ocean use unit is a unit that basically derives food, energy, and biodiversity pathways given the different land uses, is explicitly focused on agriculture and is in direct collaboration with the Fable consortium that develops pathways to sustainable land use and food systems. And currently, we are thinking of developing relevant pathways for oceans and seas. Then the health unit tries to measure the mental and physical health effects from climate change, extreme weather events, and transpose them into a monetary metrics that will be integrated into investment decisions in order to decide to put additional budget in climate adaptation. Then the economic and policy analysis units basically derives the connection between the SDGs and the European Green Deal, and also mines the connection between the SDGs and the spending in the recovery and resilience funds of each country. Our machine learning and textual analysis basically identifies that the European Green Deal is a good transposition of the SDGs. However, it is quite efficient in helping the SDGs that are related to sustainable food, land, water, and oceans, and energy decarbonization and sustainable industry. However, is less efficient with regards to the SDGs that are relevant to education, inequality, well-being, demography, sustainable cities and communities, and also the digital revolution for sustainable development. And if you look at the way we have allocated budgets across the different investments using the 750 billion of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, we will see that a lot is SDG based, a lot has gone to industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Here you see the budget allocation for the Southern European countries. But what we see is a discrepancy between the SDGs that are really performing bad and those that receive most of the money. You don't see those that are performing really bad receiving most of the money. And also, we have general equilibrium analysis that identifies how one can support those households that are vulnerable to EU climate policies, and how one can mitigate regressive effects by creating measures, a package of fiscal measures that support these vulnerable households, so that at the end of the day, you achieve implementation of the SDG framework, the European Green Deal, and at the same time, you assure more equality, increase in GDP, and increase in employment. There are another two units that I'm going to go very fast over. The first one is innovation acceleration. As I said before, innovation is crucial because it's the technological advancements that allow us to be hopeful that we'll be able to respond to the climate crisis on time. We have two accelerators adding up to 150 startups that provide solutions for net zero shipping and ports, and also climate adaptation. Many solutions, each locality, each city, each region, each nation should sit together with the scientific pathways that come from the units that I presented now, and at the final unit, co-design based on the scientific output, but also based on local information, local knowledge, local idiosyncrasies, should co-design in national living labs. This is how we do it, the final pathways, because unless they understand the solutions as something that they design, as something that really responds to their needs, as something that they own and they are shareholder in, implementation will never happen. You might have the best scientific recommendations, but implementation means empowering the local stakeholders to really be shareholders in the actual implementation of the solutions. And this is the most important step of them all. And this is our hope for getting to climate neutrality on time. Thank you for your patience.
No, thank you very much for that really informative presentation. You talked about a lot.